Okay, I'm going to try an experiment tonight. Try recording a video to upload to YouTube. And this is going to be the DC12, which is a fly that was developed by Mike Rice. Mike is a Massachusetts guy and a very good fly tyer. I have not actually gotten to consult Mike directly about how he ties this fly, but I do have a mutual friend, and I've gotten to bounce a couple of questions off of Mike that way. I have also just purchased several DC12s that Mike tied, and taken a razor blade and some solvents to them and just destroyed the fly, but it came with the advantage of having a pretty good idea of how he's tying these things. So in the hook I have a Daiichi 2546 size 2. You can see here. That seems to be, if that's not the exact hook that Mike uses, it's pretty damn close. And the first thing I am going to do is tie in about 6 strands of Bucktail. I am going to use faux Bucktail by Fish Skull, because it just means every single strand is nice and straight, and you get a fully synthetic fly, which I just like the idea of. Nice sustainable thing, putting plastic in the ocean. So I'm going to take my, like I said, half a dozen or so strands of Bucktail. I want it to be about 2 to 2.5 shank lengths long. And my tying thread here is monofilament. So I'm going to take my mono back down to the bend of the hook, capture my Bucktail, that's about it. Okay. Next thing I'm going to do is tie in 4 or so strands of Krystal flash. My Bucktail I'm going to wrap forward just a little bit just to get it captured. You can snip that off. You don't need it. Krystal flash. 4 strands of Krystal flash. I only give numbers for this because, again, I bought several flies, and these numbers are pretty consistent from one fly to the next for what Mike tied. So this is a fantastic fly to represent small bait fish. Definitely a hot number for the false albacore run. So I've got 4 strands of Krystal flash, although one of them was one of those mysterious ones. There's always a couple pieces of Krystal flash that are just inexplicably shorter than all the rest, and I got one of the shorties, so let me add in another longer one. Now I'm going to take my Krystal flash and I'm going to double it around my mono and bring that back so that Krystal flash can kind of blend in with the Bucktail. Then I'm going to take 1 piece of Flashaboo. I think sometimes Mike also has used lateral scale. turn my fly in the vise so that I can tie this in tight to the hook on the far side. Then I'm going to bring it around the near side and bring it right up along the side again. Okay. Next thing that I'm going to do is take a little bit of Solarez bone dry. And I'm going to just hit it back here in the last quarter or so of my tail. And it's coming out slow not because my bone dry is dried out, but because I'm not trying to use a whole lot of it. So just a little bit of bone dry, and then I'm going to take my fingers. You got to get your hands dirty with the DC12. I'm going to take my fingers and just stroke that bone dry back a little bit. So the idea here is I'm just using a very sparse amount of bone dry. Then I'm going to hit it with my torch, and I'm not taking my fingers all the way back to the very back of my tail. So I'm going to have a little bit of that tail that hasn't gotten the bone dry on it, but it's going to stiffen up the back part of that tail and just make for a nice, stiff, sparse tail. Again, shooting for about 2.5 shank lengths on your tail there. And the tail is just slightly stiff down here by the base. I can't tell you exactly why Mike does it that way. My guess is it keeps these fairly pliable materials from fouling around the hook shank. And you're going to get a little bit of movement from the stuff we're going to add as we move along with the fly. Next thing we're going to do is tie in roughly 5 strands of Krystal flash. We're going to double these over, similar to what we did when we were building the tail. The difference here is we're going to just let these hang off the back of the fly. And you know what? I don't like the way I did that. I'm actually going to bump my thread forward slightly. And now I'm going to double it over and aim it for the back. Okay, that's pretty good. Okay. Next thing I'm going to do is use the material that is the key to the body of this fly. It's called Dazzle. Usually subtitled Deadly Dazzle, just add H2O, and the color I'm going to use here is Steelhead Silver. And I'm just going to take out a fairly sparse amount. I'll show you what I mean by fairly sparse here in a jiff. So something like this, okay? And you can kind of finger stack it a couple times if you want to. There should be a little bit of a natural taper, but it shouldn't be too extreme. Again, I'll show you here in a second what I'm talking about. Okay, so I'm going for something like this, just a slight taper to it. Okay, I'm going to invert my hook in the vise, and I'm going to tie in my Deadly Dazzle so that it goes back the farthermost fibers of my Deadly Dazzle should go back about halfway to 2/3 of the way back my tail. And I'm going to try and spread it evenly around either side of the hook. Okay. I am tying this on the bottom side of the hook. Okay, so I've got it tied in. Now I'm going to work my thread forward about 1/3 of the way up the hook shank. Maybe like that. And then I'm going to take the two, I guess I'm going to divide my Deadly Dazzle into two roughly equal portions, and I'm going to split them along either side of my fly, and then I'm going to capture them like so with a couple of, I've heard this called a bullet wrap, where you're just catching the very tip of your Deadly Dazzle. I'm going to show you in a little more detail what I'm doing in the next couple steps. But what we're really trying to do here is you get kind of like a gill effect. So what you end up with is these kind of gill looking things that stick off to the side. And what that does is it covers up your over wraps as you're wrapping that mono forward. You're using mono because you're wrapping over your materials, so you don't want to just have thread wraps underneath there, although I don't think it's the end of the world if you do. But the idea here is we're going to use these kind of gill looking things to just angle back and kind of cover up your mono wraps. Okay. Now I'm going to start right there, and I'm going to take my Deadly Dazzle, my Just Add Water, the sparse clump that I had, I'm going to cut in half, roughly at the center, and double it over onto itself. So you end up with a clump that is about twice as thick and half as long. So I just cut the existing clump that I had. I took the two sides, put them back together, cut that clump in half, and that is now what I'm going to use for the next step in our belly. And for this, I'm going to lay it in, and I now want the thickest or the longest fibers to reach back about to the bend of the hook. So they should be coming back here and just touching the bend of the hook, right about like that. And that's the best way I've found to really nail that taper that I see Mike getting when he does this fly. Another thing, you have a slight little bump right here from that previous clump that you tied in, and you're going to butt your tying thread right up against that butt from your last clump, and that'll kind of fan your Deadly Dazzle out a little bit, and it makes it just puff right out so that it goes right up against your hook shank. It puffs it out, fans it up away from the hook shank a little bit. I guess not against the hook shank, but against the bend of your hook down here. Okay. Now I'm going to do the same thing we did before. Again, this is why I'm using mono, why Mike uses mono. So you can wrap over these materials and you don't have thread wraps showing. Okay. Wrap roughly a third of the way up the shank. Then we're going to do the same trick again with making the gills. So I'm going to take my mono and I'm just going to capture right on the nub where those pieces come together. Then I'm going to come in with my scissors and trim those gills so they're just long enough to cover. You can kind of see where, oh, I don't know because I'm blocking my light. You can kind of see right here is where the last butt ends. So I'm going to bring my gills back here and just trim those again so that they just cover that butt section. Okay. Now I'm going to take my thread once again. This time I want the tips to go right to the tip, to the point of the hook. And the idea here is that when you taper this just right, you end up with a nice baitfish belly that's just perfectly tapered. Again, I'm going to butt my thread right against that butt from the last wrap. I've got my tips pretty much going right to the point of the hook. Okay. And now I'm going to once again bring my thread forward. Take my gills. I did not double the Deadly Dazzle for the third one. If you remember how I doubled on the second batch of it, I cut it in half and then doubled the thickness. I didn't do that again on the third one. It's about the same thickness for those last two tufts that get tied in. Actually, I want to take this right up to the eye of the hook. Okay. So take that last one right up to the eye. Bring your gills back. Good. And then once more, come in and trim your gills roughly so that they're going to cover your last overwraps. Okay. And that's pretty much the belly on the DC12. Now, we're going to take the Krystal flash that we had tied in and left on the back. We're going to bring that over the front, or over the top rather. Capture that with some thread or some mono. Okay. Trim that off. I got one rogue piece of Krystal flash. that is generally how the DC12 is tied. Last thing I'm going to do, because we're tying this for toothy critters, I am going to come in and just hit this with some more Solarez on the top. And this is just to lock that crystal flash in place. Also going to hit the head. Not hit the head in the sense that you might think, but I'm going to hit the head with a little bit of Solarez also. And that is how I tie Mike Rice's DC12. There are not a lot of videos out there that show how to do it. I would love it if Mike would do a video and show exactly how he does it, but again, I might not be perfect, but I'm pretty sure that's pretty close to what Mike does when he ties the DC12. Again, that comes from half a dozen or so DC12s that I have taken a razor blade to and done some reverse engineering with, and that's what I've come up with. So it does work. I have caught stripers and albies on my DC12s that I've tied, so that is what I'm going for the DC12. So if you're a fan of the DC12 and looking to tie your own, I got all these materials from Bear's Den Fly Tying and Fishing in Massachusetts. You can do the same, and that is how I tie the fly. So thanks for watching, and I hope that helps you out.